It was close to 1 a.m., and the party was winding down. You know that feeling when you've had just enough drinks to feel bold but not reckless? That was me. I opened the Uber app and booked a ride home. It said a black Toyota Camry would be there in 5 minutes. Right on time, a black Camry pulled up to the curb. Same model, same plates, or at least I thought they were. I didn't double-check. The car looked a little older than the picture on the app, but I didn't think much of it. I mean, who really notices that stuff? I opened the door, got in, and said, "Hey man, thanks for picking me up." The driver just gave me a nod, didn't say anything. That was the first red flag, but I brushed it off. Maybe he wasn't a talker. About 2 minutes in, I glanced at my phone to check the app, and that's when I noticed it. The driver in the photo was not the guy behind the wheel. The guy in the app had glasses and a friendly smile. This guy, mid-40s, no glasses, and a deadpan looked like he hadn't slept in days. My stomach tightened a bit, but I didn't say anything. Then I tried the door handle, just casually, like I was adjusting my seat. Locked. Not just child lock locked, this was deadbolt locked. That's when I knew I was in trouble. The silence in the car was unbearable. The only sound was this old-school rock station playing on low volume. I tried to break the ice. "So, been driving long?" No answer. Just stared straight ahead. His grip on the wheel was tight, knuckles pale. I was trying to stay calm, but my brain was racing. About 10 minutes in, I realized we weren't taking the usual route to my place. The roads were getting darker, more isolated. I pulled up the map on my phone, pretending to text. The little blue dot was heading in the opposite direction of my house. "Hey man," I said, keeping my voice casual. "You're going the wrong way. My place is back there." He didn't respond. Instead, he reached over and cranked up the radio. The sound of old rock blared so loud it almost drowned out my voice. At that point, I wasn't even trying to play it cool. "Listen, this isn't funny. Let me out." I shouted over the music. Nothing. He just kept driving. His face was emotionless, like he wasn't even hearing me. I started looking around the car for something, anything I could use to defend myself. The back seat was spotless, almost too clean, but under the driver's seat, I spotted the edge of a metal tool. A wrench. Maybe. My heart was pounding, but I stayed still. If he saw me reach for it, I'd be screwed. The car finally slowed down, but not because we were at my place. We were on this narrow, gravel road surrounded by trees. No streetlights, no houses. Just darkness. That's when he spoke for the first time. "Phone," he said, his voice low and cold. "Give it to me." "What?" "No man, before I could finish.
"Now!"
He barked. I didn't have a choice. I handed it over, and he tossed it into the front seat like it was nothing. He kept driving deeper into the woods, and I was panicking. My breathing was shallow, my chest tight. I tried the door handle again, hoping maybe I'd missed something. No luck. Then I remembered the wrench. I slid my hand slowly down the side of the seat, fingers stretching for the tool. It felt like hours, but I finally got a grip on it. I had no idea what I was going to do, but holding it made me feel a little less helpless. When the car finally stopped, he turned around and looked at me. His eyes were empty, like there was no soul behind them. "Out," he said. "What do you want, man?" "Money." "Just take it," I pleaded, but he shook his head. "Out," he repeated, his voice colder this time. I stepped out, clutching the wrench behind my back. He came around the car, and that's when I swung. I didn't think, I just reacted. The wrench hit his shoulder, and he stumbled back, yelling in pain. I didn't wait to see what he'd do next. I bolted into the woods, branches scratching my face and arms. I could hear him shouting behind me, but I didn't stop. My only thought was to get away. After what felt like an eternity, I saw headlights in the distance. I ran toward them, waving my arms like a maniac. It was a pickup truck. The driver, a middle-aged guy with a kind face, rolled down his window. "What the hell happened to you?" he asked. "Call the cops," I gasped. "Please." The rest was a blur. The cops found the car but not the driver. My phone was smashed on the ground near where he'd stopped. They said I was lucky to be alive. To this day, I double-check every single detail before getting into a car. I don't care if it makes me look paranoid. It was one of those mornings where everything felt off. I was heading to the airport at 4 a.m., barely awake but running on pure caffeine. The streets were dead quiet, and the only sound was the hum of the tires on the pavement as my Uber rolled up. The driver, a guy in his late 40s, stocky, with short hair and a neutral expression, barely said a word. That was fine with me. Small talk at 4 a.m. isn't really my thing. I got in, gave him a quick good morning, and settled in the back seat. The guy didn't even glance at me, just grunted in acknowledgement and started driving. I pulled out my phone, half scrolling through Instagram, half watching the GPS on the app to make sure everything was on track. At first, it was. About 10 minutes into the ride, though, the GPS showed he should have taken a left at the next intersection. Instead, he went straight. I sat up a little. I think you missed a turn," I said. He didn't respond right away. After a long pause, he finally muttered, "Don't worry. I know a shortcut." Now, I'm not the paranoid type, but something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten. His voice was calm, sure, but it was almost too calm. Like he was practiced at sounding reassuring. I forced a laugh. "Well, as long as I make my flight," I said, trying to sound chill. He didn't laugh. The further we drove, the sketchier it got. The bright, wide streets turned into narrow roads lined with warehouses and empty lots. I noticed he hadn't touched his GPS once since we left. I asked again, more firmly this time. "Hey, is this really faster? The map says we're going the wrong way." He glanced at me through the rearview mirror, his eyes flat and unreadable. "Trust me," he said. I didn't trust him. My heart was racing, but I didn't want to overreact. Maybe he really did know a shortcut, right? But then he slowed down and turned onto a street that didn't even look paved. No lights, no houses, just a long stretch of darkness. I could barely see where we were going. And then he stopped. No warning, no explanation. He just pulled over to the side of the road, killed the engine, and got out. He didn't say a word, didn't look at me, just opened the door, stepped out, and shut it behind him. I froze. What the hell was going on? My first thought was, he's grabbing something from the trunk. My second thought was worse. What if he's not coming back? I fumbled for my phone, but of course, I had barely any signal out there. Typical. Minutes felt like hours as I sat there, trying to decide if I should stay put or bolt. The guy was still outside somewhere, but I couldn't see him. The windows were fogging up a bit for my breath, making it harder to spot anything in the darkness. I heard a faint scraping sound, like something being dragged. My blood ran cold. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I cracked the window just enough to call out, "Hey, everything okay?" No response. The sound stopped, and for a second, it was dead silent. Then, suddenly, his face appeared in the window, inches from mine. I yelped and jerked back, hitting my head on the door. "Sorry," he said, his voice low but casual, like he hadn't just scared the crap out of me. "Just checking something." Without another word, he walked back around to the driver's side and got in. At that point, every instinct I had was screaming at me to get out of the car. But I stayed. I don't know why. Maybe I was too scared to make a move, or maybe I didn't want to seem rude. Either way, I stayed. He started the car again, but instead of turning back toward the main road, he drove further into the dark street. I couldn't take it anymore. "Look, man, I don't feel comfortable with this," I said, my voice shaking. "Can you just take me back to the main road?" He didn't respond, just kept driving. Finally, I saw headlights in the distance, another car coming toward us. It was the first sign of life I'd seen in what felt like forever. I don't know what came over me, but as soon as the car passed us, I yelled, "Stop the car!" To my surprise, he actually did. I didn't wait for an explanation. I yanked the door handle, jumped out, and started waving my arms like a lunatic at the car that had just passed. Luckily, they saw me and stopped. A middle-aged couple rolled down their window, their faces a mix of concern and confusion. "Are you okay?" the woman asked. I glanced back at the Uber driver. He was just sitting there, watching me with that same blank expression. No anger, no frustration, just watching. I got into the couple's car without another word and told them to drive, practically begging them to take me anywhere but there. I reported the guy to Uber later that day, but they said they couldn't find anything suspicious in his profile. No criminal record, no complaints from other riders. Nothing. I still don't know what his deal was, but I can